Welcome. You're listening, or perhaps you're watching the next episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. And today you're in for a treat because we have no plan, and you're along for the journey in another episode of Martial Things With. And today I'm joined by Jason Brick. Jason, how are you today?
Fantastic. How about your own self?
Oh, I am great. I woke up handsome just like I did yesterday. And when I wake up handsome, it's not just good for me. It's good for everybody in the world that gets to see me and interact with me. So you're welcome is, I guess, what I'm saying here. So if you're new to Whistlekick, this will be a fun one because I just opened up with a really bad joke. But if you would like to check out some of the stuff that we do, whistlekick.com, where you can find everything that we're involved with. But if you want to hear more about this show and the podcast, whistlekickmartialartsradio.com is where you can go. You can find pictures and show notes and transcripts and all kinds of stuff there. You can also find a subscribe button to subscribe to our exclusive newsletter so that you don't miss out on any of the episodes we come out. We'll send you a quick little summary about what it's about, what the episode's about, so maybe you get that email and you're like, oh, you know what? Let me watch this little video. Oh, this sounds great. I definitely want to hit this one. I don't want to miss it. So whistlekickmartialartsradio.com is where you go for that. But Jason, we're here to talk martial arts. But I'm noticing that your shirt says dad jokes, and I can't let it go. Dad jokes are how
I roll, as it's spelled. I roll.
I roll. EYE. So longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm a huge dad joke fan, so I absolutely approve of that shirt.
I've actually put in a request with my son. So I've got this shirt, and I have a shirt with a D20 that says, "This is how I roll." And so they're on tap for my birthday, which is coming up, to get me the trifecta and find me a BJJ pun shirt about I roll. So I've got the whole trilogy going on.
That is hilarious. That's great. Yeah, I have lots of dad joke shirts. It has become a thing in my house now that's what my daughter gets me for Father's Day every year, is a dad joke shirt of some kind.
Yeah, my kids' pun game at this point, they're 15 now. It has gone from, "That's my boy," to, "Dear God, what have I wrought?"
Now, that kind of humor, like we both kind of have that same dad joke humor. Does that carry over into your teaching or training at all?
As a matter of fact, it does. I have that book, There I Was When Nothing Happened, that came out a few years ago about violence prevention. And one of my favorite de-escalation drills that you can do is to play pun tennis with people. Because, and I've encountered people who don't know what pun tennis is, so for those of you who haven't heard, it's when one person starts out a pun, and then somebody else does a pun on the same basic theme, and they just go bounce back and forth for as long as you can.
Sure.
And what that is that's a low pressure, but with some pressure, exercise in coming up with the right thing to say at the right time. And so it's actually not just hilarious, but it's also a form of self-defense practice. And it's a great one you can just play with your kids in the car.
Yep. Now, if you're going to try this, though, how would the other person know that that's what you're starting to instigate?
I mean, if you've ever played pun tennis, it's kind of what's the word? Implied, right? Like you'll say something like you're making some kind of cow pun, right? And then say, "Yeah, that was kind of cheesy."
I mean, that's utterly distracting to do that.
Right.
If you're,
See, now you're going to milk it for all it's worth. So and you just go on and on and on and on like that.
Gotcha.
And that's the game. And yeah, if you do that, you're practicing in a low pressure but some pressure environment, coming up with the right thing to say at the right time.
Yeah.
If you want to really advance your verbal de-escalation skills, what I dare you to do is go take an improv class at the local community college or the local community center, preferably one where the final is in front of a live audience. Because if you want to talk about high pressure, adrenally loaded, coming up with the right thing to say at the right time, do it for a grade in front of 400 people you don't know.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great advice. And, I have trained in school. I trained in a school once where the instructor said there were basically 3 times when you were put in a high-pressure environment. We're talking martial arts. and those 3 times are when you're testing, when you're competing, or if you're actually in an altercation. And, putting ourselves under pressure is not a bad thing. Feeling the pressure of testing and having eyes on you and whatever can be challenging and can be difficult to get over. So what you're expecting in doing an improv class is something similar. Like, yes, it is part of your grade, but you are performing in front of, X number of people that are there to watch. And, getting used to those types of nerves can be, for lack of a better word, nerve-wracking.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the difficulties in self-defense training, whether we're talking physical, whether we're talking mental, whether we're talking emotional, is it is difficult to get that adrenal load that you will absolutely have if you're using it in real time in a situation. And in many ways, it would be unethical for us as instructors to introduce that kind of adrenal load on the mat. But public speaking is a really good way.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. And it's one of the things that I find comes easy to me personally. Like, I don't have a problem getting in front of a group of people and publicly speaking in front of them, and whether it's
folks who are listening instead of watching, you can see my shocked face right now. The look of utter surprise that Andrew has no issue about being up in front of people.
Yep. But it is something that I would say probably a vast majority of people struggle with, and it brings a lot of anxiety of being in front of a group of people and having to talk or demonstrate or whatever. And it's something that if you are a martial arts instructor, one would hope you've gotten over that, because otherwise you're going to have a really difficult time doing your job. But I still think a vast majority of people struggle with that anxiety of having to be in front of people. And I think the scenarios where people have gotten over that, I think those people generally tend to appreciate what they got out of the experience.
I agree. I mean, one of the things is that we are 20th century software running on a quarter million year old hardware. And one of the reasons that warrior classes exist is because humans fear exile more than they fear death.
Yep.
Because for the overwhelming majority of human existence, exile didn't just mean death, it meant a slow, lonely, terrible death.
Yep.
And going up in front of a large group of people and speaking when we're talking about our quarter-million-year-old hardware, we're risking exile. Even though we know that's not the case with our 20th century software. But that's the psychology behind why so many of us are so afraid of publicly speaking.
Yeah. And Jeremy and I have definitely talked about that. It is probably the biggest fear that people have, is being exiled. That's what it would have been back in caveman days, but even now today, being alone. And obviously, there are people for whom this is not an issue.
Yeah.
And they prefer to be alone, and that's fine. But I would agree with that as a general statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another reason why those leadership classes, assistant instructor classes and such that a lot of dojos have in place can give a tween or teen what amounts to a superpower by the time they're in college. You get your junior instructor who starts out at about age 12 or so and spends those 6 years coming in and teaching small groups of kids, introducing the testing subjects and whatnot. Then they're used to public speaking by the time they're in college, and they're a leg up ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And thinking about it, for me, I was never officially at my school. When I was in high school training in martial arts, I was not officially an assistant instructor.
We're of an age that we were teenagers before that became kind of a trend.
Yeah.
Much less formalized.
Absolutely.
We were kids on
but there were definitely classes where I, as a 15 or 16-year-old, would have been asked, "Hey, can you take these 3-4 people over there and work on this thing?" And those 3-4 people were adults. So I was
Yeah.
having to teach as a 15-year-old people in their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
And
Or hey, Adams, warm them up real quick. I need to make a phone call. Right?
yeah, and that's a difficult thing if you're
Yeah.
not used to it. And it took me a little while to get used to it, but it's probably one of the main reasons why I don't have trouble being in front of a group of people and demonstrating or teaching or public speaking or whatever.
Yeah. As you know, I transitioned from running a martial arts school about 10 years in that industry into freelance writing and journalism.
Yep.
And I almost immediately transitioned into speaking at conferences. In part because I was a middling public speaker by the standards of the martial arts industry. I'm, top 5 percentile by the standards of writers, as
Sure.
it turns out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's all about martial arts, as we know, doesn't end, right? There's
No.
no end to it. And the more you do something, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.
That's something that I tell students all the time is that, as a black belt, I might make it look easier. It's not easier. I'm just working on different things,
Yeah.
but there's no end. So we're just continually working on it. Yes. Oh, my dog came in to say hi.
Hey there, Puggy. How you
She's
doing?
here. Hi, Daisy. You're a good girl. Yep. So yeah, the more you work on it, the better it and easier it will become. And I think it's all about stepping outside of your comfort zone, just
Yeah.
just a little bit.
I mean, I think that's one of the occupational hazards of people who've been training for a very long time. We can fall into a rut and not be pushing our own limits. I think that's especially risky for people who are running a martial arts school because they've got all the stresses of the financial situation, all the stresses of running a business, all the not karate things that running a karate school does, and we're teaching yellow belts and orange belts, so we're spending a lot of our karate time on early material that we've really got and dealing and answering questions that we've answered. And
Yep.
so it takes even more when you're running a school to find the time, find the interest, and get in there and tread ground that you haven't already stomped into mud.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. I know Jeremy and I have mentioned this before that there's as a martial arts school owner, there are so many facets to what you have to do, way more than just you train at this school and the instructor asks you to teach. That there's so much more, and we have often said that some of the best martial arts teachers in the world can be the worst martial arts school owners
Yeah.
because they're really good at the teaching part and they've not learned the other parts.
Yeah, what was the book, The E-Myth, that came out in the 90s? I want to say Richard Gerber. His whole point was that, so you're an expert at something. You're a great software designer. You're a good martial arts teacher. You're an excellent electrician. Very few of the things of your traits, skills, or talents that made you excellent at that also mean you're going to be good at running a business. And that's exactly why. And it's very similar to how often champions make very bad coaches.
Yep. And just because you're a great, champion, you're a good doer, doesn't mean you're a good teacher. And
Yeah.
I absolutely think it goes the other way. You can be a great teacher, but not a great doer.
Yeah.
Right? And I brought this up before on the show, but we may have new listeners. There is a famous woman in the Highland dance world. And in Highland dance, if you're unfamiliar, basically picture yourself standing on one leg and jumping up and down for about 2 minutes. It's very physically demanding. And she continually, every year, would send students of hers to the World Championships for Highland dancing, and her students would win or be in the prize list all the time. She herself is a 450-pound woman. She is not standing on one foot and jumping up and down for 2 minutes. She can't do that. But she is an incredible instructor. And you just need to watch her students to see that. So, teaching and doing are two very different things. I would agree.
One of the reasons for that is that if you're a champion, often these things come to you very naturally, and so it only has to be explained to you once. Where if you're a dunderhead like me, you got to explain something to me 8, 9, 10 times. So when I have to explain to somebody else, I've got 8, 9, 10 ways of explaining it.
Exactly.
And also, I think there's a patience issue. A lot of people who are champions get a little frustrated when other people take longer to master something than they took.
That's a really good point I hadn't thought of. I've often said one of the best skills as an instructor you can learn is how to teach the same thing different ways. Yeah. And a lot of those champions, they only learned one way, and that's the way that works for them. And if you haven't learned how to be a better teacher, learning those skills is important. One way you can do that, you can take our Whistlekick's martial art teacher training and certification course. Just saying, that's one way, not the only way. But check that out if you...
Look at you with segueing in the awesome little...
I know, right? Wasn't even planned.
I kid, but it is a great product. It's a great program.
So, what are you working on right now? I'm just curious, like martial art wise, where should we take this? We talked about humor, we talked about teaching. What else? Where else can we go?
So martial arts wise, right now I've been getting more seriously involved with the Goju Shori weapon system. That was founded by Dave McNeil, one of my favorite humans ever, and I was involved with him back in the 2000s, and then life, and then I decided I wanted to get back in, and it's this system was designed by Dave McNeil, who is he's quote unquote retired, but he's still very active. He was assigned by his teacher based on the conversation they had about how bow staves and katanas are cool, but they won't let you take it on the plane, and they're not really useful on the subway. So they built a weapon system based on things you can take through TSA.
Oh, interesting. So give some examples. So, most of us listening would probably, when they think weapons, they're going to think, if they're a Japanese or Okinawan practitioner, they're going to think bow or nunchaku or sai, tonfa, iekubo maybe, things like that. People listening might be thinking sword or eskrima sticks, kali sticks, things like that. What are some of the things that you're training with?
So originally the system was built around 3 weapons, which was the cane, a knife with a blade under 3 inches, because this was originally developed in the 90s, pre 9/11, when you could still take those on planes, and then also the Chinese fan.
Interesting.
And since then, it has evolved to the cane, the flashlight, and the carabiner.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they prefer the smaller ones.
Yeah. I just happen to for those that are watching, you can actually see a flashlight I just happen to have sitting here, which I picked up the other day. It's like, man, this is a pretty hefty flashlight. But you're talking a smaller flashlight. One of, in my opinion, one of the best self-defense weapons.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan. I mean, not only because of its effectiveness as a weapon, not only because you can also blind somebody in low light conditions, but also because it's really useful a lot of the rest of the time.
Yep.
It's a flashlight.
Yeah.
And then the carabiner is just gross. So imagine, you want a good rock climber's carabiner.
Yeah.
One that'll fit over your paw, but not like brass knuckles here, but around the meat of your hand.
Okay.
So just think about having a good D-ring carabiner right around the meat of the hand here. And a slap is dental work.
Yeah, sure.
And then just think of 3 or 4 techniques and what would happen if you had a nice ring of metal there. And then if you really want to get owie, think about joint locks and grinding that across the back of the hand while you got them in a figure 4. It's fun.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. And you bring up a really good point that weapons. I personally am a big fan of training with weapons, and the weapons that I typically train with are your traditional karate kobudo weapons. But I'm not often found on the street walking around with my tonfa. or walking around with my sai.
Yeah.
As much as I want to be Raphael from the Ninja Turtles, like I'm not walking around all the time with my sai. Now, I will say that
There's a lot of places where doing that, there's a lot of places where just doing that can get you in trouble, and a lot more places where if you are attacked and deploy that weapon, the fact that you were carrying it in the first place is going to catch the attention of the prosecutor or the other guy's civil lawyer.
Absolutely. But one of the things I also teach is that a lot of the techniques that you do with certain of these weapons are translated something really easily to a large flashlight or other household objects, or, in my case, drumsticks, right? Drumstick is just an 18-inch small club, basically. So, there's a lot of correlation there, but I have never thought of designing a weapon system around everyday carry items, which makes a lot of sense. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's very smart, and it's run by very good people. Soki McNeil, he's a really good, really giving, really kind human, one of the best people I know, and also he has a wicked sense of humor. The best story I have that really displays both of these things was I happened to be in town, and I asked to see if I could buy him a beer. And instead, he has me out to his house and gives me like 2 hours of free instruction from the head of the system. However, during that, we've got a form that you go forward 16 steps and backward 16 steps. And he says, okay, you're supposed to end and start at the same place, very common. Drops a quarter on the ground, tells me to start standing on that quarter. And I go forward and backward, and I'm 6 inches off. And we're doing it again. And I'm 4 inches off in another direction. Back and forth. Probably 15 minutes before I noticed he was moving the damn quarter with his toe while I was up forward. So those two things tell you most of what you need to know about Dave McNeil.
So, it's interesting. We started off this episode talking about humor, and a lot of the most enjoyable instructors that I have personally trained with use humor on a regular basis in their classes. Like that's not to say you have to have that to be a good instructor. I have had really good instructors who aren't super humorous. But the ones that are, for me, tend to be the ones that stick out as being really good instructors.
Yeah, generally speaking. Like you said, there are always exceptions. But, humor is sometimes necessary, especially when we're dealing with the emotional load of what we're talking about. If you're a serious martial artist, you understand that what you're training in is harming another human being. And a little bit of humor here and there is a good release valve for that emotional load. I think a lot of us have, we laugh at some pretty foul stuff as regards to what just happened to that guy. Recently, I laughed very hard when an instructor I was talking to started referring to martial artists as natural consequence delivery engines, which is funny. But also, if you think about what that really means, but it is. I think it's a easy and I think almost necessary way of handling that aspect of what we do.
Well, and I think there have definitely been studies done that people learn better when they're having fun. That if something is fun, they're enjoying it, they will retain it better. My daughter comes home from school and is enjoying subjects that she didn't necessarily enjoy before because her teacher is, occasionally bringing out a guitar, for example, and singing a song about whatever it is they're learning. And she's coming home and talking about it because she's remembering it and retaining it. Now, that's not to say that this teacher spends an hour playing guitar for his students every single day, but I think in general, using fun to relay information works, and there's studies to back that up.
Yeah, or if anybody doubts it, and your martial arts instructor, spend 1 week asking your kids' class, hey, everybody clean up the deck for a couple minutes before we end class. And then the next week, just say, okay, everybody, who can pick up 10 things and put them away fastest? And you'll see immediately what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you made intentionally or not, you gamified it. You made it a game, or you could.
Yeah.
You didn't just there, but you could. Who can pick up the 10 things the fastest? Right now, you've
Yeah.
made it a game.
Exactly. And the studies on gamification as regards to speed of acquisition, length of retention, depth of understanding. It's relatively new data, but all of it is really strong.
Yep. So if you're an instructor listening, think about those things when you are going about your class. I think they can make a huge difference for sure.
Now, you have to be a little careful. Back when I was running my school, we would take a Labor Day weekend, and I did a camp where I took the kids camping out to the coast for 3 days. And the very first time we decided to do a litter patrol of the campground. Okay, everybody in the teams go out. We're going to see in 20 minutes who can get the largest number of objects. So one team kept picking up pieces of paper and then tearing them up.
I mean, yeah, no,
You win this
get it.
round, kid, but second round, new rules.
Well, and I think that is a martial trait, though. It is learning to pivot when something doesn't go the way you expect it to. When you're sparring and you're trying this same move over and over and it doesn't work, you've got to pivot to something else. If you're teaching and students aren't picking it up, or they find a loophole, which they did in that particular example, you got to pivot and find a different way to get the same thing done. I think that's a really good martial lesson.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. I had a train of thought and it choo-chooed right out of my head.
Did it get derailed? So you had your train of thought and was trying to decide whether to not make any changes and run over 5 people or make a change and run over 1.
One person. Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember where I was going to go. That's all right. No biggie.
Yeah, my train of thought is usually still boarding at the station.
I get that. That load really weighs really heavy on me sometimes.
Yeah. So other than that, other things we're working on is I'm working on more with on the family safety thing. Had an interesting conversation. Had an interesting client recently who wanted advice about trans safety for their kid. It's interesting there because there's no experts in that. The phenomenon is new enough. Trans people have existed forever, but the current context in America is so new that anybody who tells you they're an expert in that is fibbing.
Sure.
But their challenge was that they thought they had a boy, and then senior year found out they had a girl. And she decided that when she went to college that following year, she was going to live, from day one, just live as a girl. And the mom's question was, so, we respect this, we support this, but our child, we have an 18-year-old girl going to college who has now spent 18 years internalizing how to be safe as a woman.
Sure.
And so they're like, hey, you got anything for me? I'm like, well, I don't got anything for you. Let me see if I know anybody who does. And, we came up with a few things, and mostly drafting, right? Pay attention to the women you're hanging out with. Do what they're doing.
Yep. One of the best, I've always often said, one of the best self-defense tools, air quotes, we have are our eyes. Just being observant is super, super important.
And if you're not, there's the idea of baseline about, you look for things you don't expect. You look for things that aren't normal. When I teach that, I talk about a bar, right? Where you walk into a bar that's quiet, doesn't tell you anything about safety. Walk into a bar that's loud, doesn't tell you anything about safety. You're in a loud bar that gets quiet, or you're going into a bar that is usually quiet, but it's loud. That gives you important safety information. So if you're, for example, somebody who's recently living as a woman, so you don't know the cues that that a woman who's been a woman that whole time knows. Pay attention to them and see what they're doing. Watch the locals. When you travel and don't know whether this bar is supposed to be loud or not, you watch the locals. If you don't know if this neighborhood or this park is safe for you to go through with your family, you scan around and see if there are any families there.
Yep. Yep.
And so that's kind of what we talked about. Had
And,
another
and
interesting, yeah, carry on.
I was gonna say, and that's smart for in other contexts as well. If you are a karate practitioner and you're going on vacation and you say, "Oh, I'm going to go to this taekwondo school because I'm on vacation for a week," but I don't practice taekwondo. I don't know how they do things. It's the same idea. You're going to look for context clues from other people as terms of, oh, how are you lining up? Like, what do you? Oh, we bow at this point. Okay, like being observant is really important. You were going to say you had another client.
Oh, not another client, but another situation with drafting that happened. This is a while back. My wife and I were going to a concert, and the venue was in a kind of sketchy part of Portland. Portland's not the terrible roiling mess that people are saying, but every town's got sketchy neighborhoods, and the best concert venues tend to be in those neighborhoods. And we parked about 8-9 blocks away, and we're walking there, and I noticed this is about 7 o'clock at night, that a young woman, probably in her late 20s, had sped up until she was about 8 feet behind us, 7 feet behind us, and then slowed down and just kind of stayed there while we were walking around. And I didn't communicate with her. I didn't want to bother her or anything, but I asked my wife later, but I think she's drafting off us. And she says, "Oh, yeah, no, I do that all the time." And I asked a couple of other women's self-defense experts that I know, and apparently this is a thing. That if you're alone in an area and you're not sure about things, go walk close enough to a group of people that you look like you're with the group. And there you go.
Yeah, very smart. Something that I, as a hetero-cis man, would never have necessarily thought of.
Exactly. Like there's things like that where you and I are both kind of in the same boat. We're large and large-ish, cis het white guys with athletic backgrounds.
Yep.
And our safety context, and this is a pet peeve of mine in the martial arts community in general, the number of 250-pound, 6'3" Marines who are now sheriffs, who are teaching women's self-defense. I'm actually starting work on a book or something that I'm titling The Context Gap, where one of the biggest problems in the self-defense industry is that people are teaching who have such a fundamentally different context of safety and violence from the people taking their class that they're not charlatans, they're not lying, but they're not giving good advice.
Yeah, they're not going to come at it. They are probably, because there are always exceptions, they are probably not going to come at it from the angle that makes the most sense for the people taking the class. I will not teach a women's self-defense class without a woman instructor assisting me or saying directly, "You're teaching the class. They've asked me to come in and teach this seminar to them, but instead I want to bring you in to teach it, and I will assist you. But I'm not, I wouldn't do it by myself." And I also think, and Jeremy and I have talked about this. We've had an episode on it, and I couldn't tell you the number. But we did an episode on how martial arts instructors are some of the worst self-defense instructors.
No, absolutely. There's a guy, Paul Vunak, who, he's a Bruce Lee lineage guy. And I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with a lot of what he says. But he does, one of the smartest things he points out is that there's a difference between self-perfection drills and study and self-preservation drills and study. And martial artists, we generally, most of our what we do is self-perfection. We drill specific techniques to reflex. We train our bodies to be strong and agile. We do a lot of complex patterns to keep our minds nimble, whatnot. Very few of those, like the tussles I've been in my adult life, have always ended with a crossface and a throw from my wrestling days in high school.
Sure.
Because they're simple, they're effective, they get the job done, and it's what my body remembers the most. Even though I haven't been on a wrestling mat in more than 30 years. But if you want self-defense, often the keys are simpler and more direct. and less valuable for training a whole body system, training and serving the nerdity that is our martial arts study, where we like complex things. So I agree with you entirely, and that's one of the reasons I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah. So if you want to check out that episode, go back through and look up I don't remember the number, but you'll find it in our back catalog, which is quite extensive at this point. This being episode 1071.
You've been at it a minute, guys.
There's the repetition, right? That we just talked about. You know, you do something so often that you get, it becomes ingrained in part of you. Jeremy jokes often that when he started doing the podcast 10 plus years ago, he didn't know what he was doing, but he was, there's no end to martial arts, so there can't be any end to this either, because this is a martial arts podcast. He just was too dumb to figure out how to give up.
I think a lot of us suit that. And yeah, that kind of training. But yeah, you are absolutely right. Kind of like we were talking about with champions and teachers.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say that martial arts are good or bad. I'm a big believer in the idea that there isn't a martial art that is better than another martial art.
Mm-hmm.
There are instructors that are better than other instructors, and there are martial arts that are better for specific goals than other martial arts.
Yep.
But it gets back to, as martial arts instructors, if we are asked to go teach a self-defense class or whatnot, we really need to examine how the context of our students in that self-defense class is different from the context of the students on our mat.
Yeah.
And then when we teach, serve that, and if we need to, and we probably will, find somebody to help us. Like right now, my main Kempo instructor is a very brilliant woman named Rebecca Knight, who's 5'3", 5'4", and if she weighs 100 pounds, she's holding a cat. And I've chosen to work with her because her context of physicality is so different from mine.
Yep.
Right, I'm a middle-aged high school jock who is really struggling to get under 200 pounds. So the way she throws an elbow is very different than the way I throw an elbow.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think it's important for me to know that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming on and chatting. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you so much. I always love to hang out with you guys.
Yeah, it was great. For anyone, again, new to the show, whistlekickmartialartsradio.com is where you can go to find out all of the things about this show, the podcast, transcripts, pictures. You can sign up for our exclusive newsletter there by hitting the subscribe button. And if you want to see all of the stuff Whistlekick does, which is a lot. We have a book division. We run an online journal called magazine called Martial Journal. You can sign up for any of our MATIC teacher training certification programs, apparel, sparring gear, all of that stuff you'll find at whistlekick.com. And if you use the code podcast15, you can save yourself 15% on almost everything, but not everything. So thank you so much for being here, Jason. Super glad to have sat down and chat with you. And until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.